Hello. Good evening. It's late, but we're on. How are you guys? Hey, Jess. Hi from Florida. I'm getting my notes ready. How is everybody? Glad to see y'all too. Trying to practice what I preach around here. You guys ready for this? I got some cool stuff to share with you. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes to get on because it is later than I normally would scope. But I had a one-on-one with a prospect person, so I had to go do that first. It has been a while. I did one about 2 weeks ago, but it's been like 2 weeks in between each one. I just put on peppermint because my Periscope tonight is on focus. Hi from Georgia. How are you guys doing? Y'all up late working? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. How many new Periscopers do I have on here? I know I am perky for this late. I met with a new person, so it got me a little bit awake. So we're going to talk. Everybody doing good? Oh my gosh, you guys, we had such an amazing weekend here in Texas. I wish all of you guys could have been here. We got to hear from the ULA guys. We got to hear from Jim Bob. We got to hear from Heather Brock. It was fantastic. And I'm just like oozing with information. But one of the things I want to talk about tonight is goals and what is probably affecting all of our goals and achieving them. So, you guys, phone, don't you dare die on me. Yeah, you guys had Jim Bob at Kansas City. Well, Jim Bob likes to do this to me because he's my mentor. He likes to say my name out in front of all these people when I'm not really prepared for it. And so it put me back into, oh my gosh, I've got to be there for people. I've got to open my mouth. So this is your first time on Periscope? Awesome. Well, let me introduce myself before I just ramble on. My name is Vanessa Stegner, and I am part of the Lime Time team here in Texas. I am an educator on Young Living essential oils, and my biggest passion with that has to do with emotions. I love the way the oils work in the body. I love the way they work with our chemistry. I love the way that God created our bodies to work and how these just fit right into that. And so I usually talk about the way the mind works, the brain, emotions. And someone had asked me a while back about overeating or emotional eating. And in a roundabout way, we're going to kind of talk about that. But we got to hear John Acuff. How many of y'all heard John Acuff at Young Living Convention? If you haven't ever heard of him, you want to go check him out. He is a great inspirational person to listen to. Yes, Jim Bob does reference me a lot. I've known Jim Bob and Cindy Haggerton for quite a while. Love them so much, and I'm so thankful to do this with them. It's amazing. So, who on here thinks that they are getting lots of work done with multitasking? Whoever has felt after you've got all of these things coming, especially if you're a Young Living distributor, if you're not, a Young Living person and you're interested in learning about that, you can message me privately after this. But if you are a multitasker, or if you thought that that was effective, you're actually damaging your goal setting and your goal achieving. And so it actually will cause an overactive part of your brain, and we're going to talk about that. So please don't get on here, and this is not what this scope is about, so we're just going to have to block you. Sorry. Screwing up several things at once. Yes. So we're going to talk about that. And I have a YouTube channel, so if you want to go on there and watch some of my past scopes that I've done on emotional classes, on different oils, there's going to be more coming up. I have been trying to focus specifically on one thing at a time, and so that's probably why you haven't seen me on here. So I'm trying to be a good steward of running a team and teaching you guys. So we are going to keep doing these and do them in a timely manner and with good information, okay? So before I do anything, I always like to add scripture to what I'm teaching. So this is the scripture that I'm going to go off of. It's Proverbs 4:20 through 23. So if you're a Christian, it just anchors my belief that this stuff is in the Word. But this is also science. So yeah, chronic list maker. We all are. And it's okay to make lists. That's great. But I'm going to tell you how to actually manage this. And the reason that I'm teaching this is it comes out of my own personal need to know that that's how it works. You know, that this is not how I should be handling this. And multitasking has been around not for very long. They actually came up with it not a few years back, where it was thought that we could handle all these things. And if you're a mother, you actually sometimes have to do this. It's where, you know, the house is on fire, so we have to take care of those things. And you have the ability to do that, but over time, when you're putting yourself in those situations, and now with the presence of social media and having your phone in your hand all day long, and Twitter, and even me on Periscope, and those things that mess with your attention, it actually can cause you to be emotionally unstable and not be able to make sound decisions. So, y'all ready to hear about it? So before I start, the scripture is Proverbs 4:20. And it says, "My son, pay attention to what I say. Listen closely to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to a man's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life." If this is your first time on my Periscope, I have taught several classes on this, and I never know who's on here for the first time or who has never heard this. And so sometimes it's revelation to you. But your thoughts are chemical processes. They are chemical and energy, and it's not just an ethereal thing in the sky when you're thinking. And so, okay, great, Tiffany, you ready for this? So your thoughts actually produce something in your brain and in your body. And every thought that you think actually affects the cells in your body. But specifically, it affects the heart, which goes so much back into scripture about the heart is the wellspring of life. Your heart is your anchor, and it anchors a lot of the decisions that the emotions make. The heart has to regulate things. And I don't have time to go into that, but it's so cool. If you want to just do a quick research on that on your own, go look at how the heart affects the emotions and how the mind and the heart work together. But in this scripture, he's specifically talking about concentrate, pay attention, listen closely. And we've lost the ability to concentrate. In the generation we live in, concentration is almost a lost art. We have so many things grabbing for our attention. And so this weekend we set a lot of goals. We had Spring Symposium here in Texas with Alyssa Francis and Oily Families hosting, but we had so many different teams and so much good information and so much heart. And one of the biggest things was the goal setting. Goal setting, goal setting. You hear that all the time, but sometimes your goals feel like you can't get to them because they're so big, or you're so scattered, or you just can't figure out where you're at. And so one of the biggest things that affects your goal setting is multitasking. And I'm going to tell you why. We're actually not, so a computer can handle, like I have about 20 tabs up right now on my computer. Your brain cannot handle that. It wasn't created to handle tons of information or tons of having to do. That's why, like back in the day when you had to, pat your head and rub your stomach, if you added one more thing in there, you would end up rubbing both, because the prefrontal cortex part of your brain will discard the third thing. I'm getting ahead of myself. But if you want to achieve your goals and not be an emotional mess, stop multitasking. Be intentional with what you're doing. And I am a homeschool mom of 3 boys. I try to do Young Living business at home, and I also do homeschool, housework. There's a lot of error in this area in my life. And if you're a mom and you're trying to juggle a lot of things, Dr. Troy and Dave from the ULA guys, how many of you guys know who the ULA guys are? They did a demonstration where you spin the plates, right? And you're spinning all these plates. Well, you can't keep spinning. You're going to have to leave some hanging out. Yay, we love the ULA guys. They're so awesome. But physically in your brain, have you ever noticed let's just get real here. On the days that you've thought you've handled so much and in your mind you're very busy, you can sit back after the day is over and realize, I didn't really get a lot done. I felt like I did, and now I feel wiped out and I want to eat a tub of ice cream because I have no more decision-making ability left. I don't know what happened to my day. And this happens to me as a business person and a mom. Yes, have this all the time. Keep checking messages. And we live in such a, it's so hard because if you have a cell phone and someone texts you, there's this drive to have to answer them right back, or you get an instant message in your Facebook, or you get someone likes your photo, and your brain has actually never been it's not created to multitask. It's task switching. So you're actually switching from one thing to the other and giving one thing less attention, and you go on autopilot. This happens a lot with moms with kids and that dadgum phone in your hand, and your kids are like, Mom, and you're like, yeah, I'm paying attention to you. Or you go to dinner with your spouse and you're on your phone and they're talking to you, but you're not really paying attention. There's not really the consciousness of thought in what's happening. So one thing that John Acuff said, and I want you to remember this, in your ability to achieve goals and the things that God has called you to do in purpose, is to make war with distractions and peace with commitments. Distractions are so sly and they're so easily, they can pull you quickly. I mean, our distractions are everywhere, and it's actually causing us to have brain issues and attention issues. And sometimes we get mislabeled as one thing or the other, and it's actually just an over bombarding of being a multitasking brain or trying to be that. So deep intellectual thought helps us create more wrinkles in our brain. So that's when we actually can stop and think. The scripture that I read was Proverbs 4:20 through 23. And y'all, I'm a big Dr. Caroline Leaf fan. I love her work, and I love that she's a believer, and she actually is part of our church here in Texas. And I keep trying to look at the camera here. But her newest book that I've been studying is on how to switch on your brain, and she has a whole chapter on this. She actually calls it milkshake multitasking, which is exactly how my brain feels half of the time. Anybody else feel like a milkshake blender going off in your brain? And then you walk into the room and you're like, what was I doing? What was I even coming in here for? And then something else happens and you have to switch. And so I'm going to give you some real tactics on this. I'll show you her book. Here's the one. She's got two. This is the newer one. The older one is so much science that you have to be such a nerd like me to really read the whole thing. And quite honestly, I have picked and pecked at that whole book. So, but this one is laid out a little bit more simple. She's a genius, so it's obvious in this book. But this chapter, she actually talks how we've become shallow, how people can only read 140 characters in a tweet. And like if you're doing business, they say don't write big long posts because people won't read them. We've learned to shut off and to not focus on things because honestly, our brain can't handle it, so it has to stop. You have to throw away all of that stuff. So, and it's even affecting students and the way that they learn and not being able to retain or remember things. And we actually have some oils we're going to talk about to help you after you've made the decision to stop doing this, to help you really focus in on what you're doing, even when things come bombarding, being able to switch tasks effectively. So, it is a persistent myth. Multitasking is a persistent myth. And it's actually damaging to your brain and to your children's brains. If you're trying to push that on them, having them doing too many things at one time does not teach them how to concentrate and really build those deep neural pathways in their brain and in their memory. So let me read this other thing to you. So let's talk about 8 really quickly, and then I'm going to give you some oils and some tactics to how to squash this. So 8 reasons multitasking is bad for your brain. 1, it slows down your reaction time and impairs your judgment. Hello, texting and driving. It actually, And I'm going to tell you really quickly why that is. So there's a front part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. Now, this part of your brain is responsible for decision making. It's the oldest part. It's actually the last developed part of your brain. This is why babies will cry, and children who haven't developed this part of their brain will actually get very upset, because that emotional part of the brain, the limbic system, and even the more primitive part of the brain that's just trying to get fed, clothed, all of those things, it will override until this part of the brain is developed. And so when we are multitasking, that part of the brain has to make decisions about what is happening, and it has to focus. It's the part of the brain that you use for focus. It's the part of the brain that you use to say this is not a good decision, to go after those instinctual type urges that are not healthy for our life. And when that part of your brain gets tired or overused, so here's what they've done in a study. They had a group of people sort two different things in alphabets. Like they had two different letters. They had capital letters and lowercase letters, and they had to sort those two things. So they were multitasking. They had several things that they had to do in that. And then they added in a third task, and they had a harder time remembering. They had to add in color. So they had to do uppercase, lowercase, and then color. Well, that third task, one of those tasks gets dropped by the prefrontal cortex. And I know some of you like this, and some of you are like, shut up and just tell me what to do. But they showed it on a brain scan that prefrontal cortex splits in half to right brain, left brain. This is where Jim Bob comes in with the brain balancing. If you haven't watched his stuff on that, it's amazing. But then you only have one side and the other side is working. And a third task is going to get dropped. So this is why you can talk on the phone and do the dishes fine, but when your child comes up and asks you a question, you either can't finish your conversation, you tell them to go away, your brain can't handle that third task, especially when it has to do with making a decision. That's why when we were kids, we always asked mom for things that we weren't usually going to get away with when she was on the phone doing something else. Makes total sense now, right? So it slows down your reaction time. It impairs your judgment. You have no patience. Hello, moms. Do you ever feel like, gosh, I just flew off the handle because I was trying to answer this message, and I was trying to sit and do this other thing, and then someone asked me a question. You can only handle 2 tasks at a time effectively. They have shown that some things that are just motor, like memorization, like eating, you don't have to use a lot of your prefrontal cortex to make the decision to lift the spoon to your mouth. Does that make sense? So you can text someone while you're eating, while you're trying to listen to a conversation, but it's still not effective. You're still not paying attention. Does that make sense, Lisa? So you make more errors and the quality of your work decreases. And this all has studies. And I'll even post this on my site where this was a guy's blog, and it comes from a book as well as on top of Caroline Leaf. So there's lots of research on this. And how many of y'all thought, man, I am a great multitasker? I used to tell my husband, I am so good at multitasking. I am so much better at this than you. And he actually can finish one task and move on to the next, and it looks like he's accomplished something. And I'm like, how did you do that? I've got 15 things started, and none of them are finished. What? So you can read while exercising, but if you try to listen to music, one thing's going to go on autopilot. And it's actually not a good thing to do that. You want to focus on, you can listen to music while you're exercising, but if you add in one more thing, girl, I'd be tripping on the treadmill. So, it lowers your overall performance. Students who multitasked had a reduced GPA compared to their peers. It taxes your ability to learn subjects deeply. So here's where we feel like we are pretty bad at this. Like, yeah, I can do this. I'm awesome. But you actually will not remember conversations you had. Hello? Or the content of what you were looking at, you're skimming. And you're not learning deeply. It's going to go into the part of your memory that gets washed out at night. Or it's not long-term memory. It's not something you're going to store and remember. It's not deep study. The topic on here, Carter 2009, is about multitasking and how it affects your brain and even your emotions, okay? Your speed of learning goes down. You can't engage in basic cognitive processes required for learning new material. So you feel busy, but you actually get less done. That is me all day long. That's where I've been working on. This has been one of my intentional things that I've been working on. And your stress, here's the big part that I want to hit on. Your stress levels elevate and your mood suffers. So your rising cortisol, you have a lesser ability to control those other areas of decision making because your prefrontal cortex is so overwhelmed with trying to reach your goals. That's the part of your brain that helps you achieve your goals. And it's so overwhelmed with tasks, it doesn't really know what's important or the emotion behind what is valuable at that time, that you become, I just want to go eat potato chips or do something or drink or have, a huge thing of wine because I just feel overwhelmed. You start to lose the ability to make decisions wisely. Isn't that crazy? And you become emotional. So if that's not enough to make us start thinking differently, I'm trying to read y'all's comments because my little phone's holding it. It explains why I'm exhausted at the end of the day. Yes, you're mentally put out, done. I've been all over the world and back in my mind, but I don't feel like I ever get anywhere. It's kind of like running on a treadmill. You're not actually going anywhere. You're just exercising all of these things. Okay, so how are we going to get over this? I've heard of ADHD students should have something to fidget with in their hands while listening. That is probably a different subject, but a lot of this, what we're talking about, yes, you're making me multitask. And see, this is why Periscope is hard sometimes when you're reading comments and then trying to think. I'm having to task switch from reading to going back to my notes. Thank you. The comment you had earlier about that, a lot of that is going back to maybe helping with sensory stuff and developing, like being able to move around. Kids sometimes do need to have active motion to help bring that back to where they can focus. So I see what you're saying. It does seem like, but this is a little bit different. Motion and movement uses a different part of the brain than this part. This has more to do with like reasoning. Here, I'll pull it up and tell you exactly what it has to do. Prefrontal cortex controls intense emotions and impulses. That's the part of your brain that keeps you from yelling or it helps you make decisions. I always say it, and Caroline Leaf says that thoughts become emotions, and emotions become attitudes, which lead to actions. And so if we can even take away this part of stressing our brain out, we're going to make better decisions. We're going to do better emotionally. We're not going to binge eat or binge drink or say things that we don't mean at the end of the day because we've been conscious of what we're focused on. Okay? And I'll just repeat this really quickly. It says a properly functioning prefrontal cortex inhibits inappropriate behaviors. So when this has been damaged in a child or in a person, they have a hard time with delaying gratification. They have a hard time with having to, because that part of their brain is not being talked to. So I'm right saying I can't listen, talk on the phone, and write notes at the same time. Yes. And for some reason, maybe it's because as we age, I can't listen to music and my children talk and drive at the same time. So it's just, how does it become damaged? Overuse, okay? So we're going to talk about bringing that back. Doing multitasking over amount of time. So let me just read you the points on this. What we really do is shift our attention rapidly and haphazardly from task to task, resulting in two negative things. We don't devote as much focused attention as we should to a specific activity, or we sacrifice the quality of the attention. And actually spending more time in meditation and thinking and looking and focusing can help you in switching tasks, because we have to do it. We're moms, we're business owners. You will have to switch, but switch completely. Task switch. Don't go back and try to keep doing, have one hand in the one side and one hand in the other. In general, the pattern today is too much social media. And there's actually a whole big thing on this. It's so much worse than it was before. So it decreases our attention and it makes us have weak judgments. Not sure how to meditate? Just prayer, quiet time. Think on one thing. Pick one thing to look at. Even John Maxwell talks about spending a quiet time every day where you're quiet and you're just focused on one thing. Meditating throughout the day, I can't do that either. That doesn't happen for me. So the oils to help with this, there's 2 oils that I've thought of. There's a blend that specifically has helped me, and when I put it on, it actually blew my mind the first time I ever put it on. And I put it on at a convention-like setting. I think it was Spring Symposium, and that oil is Clarity Blend by Young Living. And Clarity is an amazing mental concentration alertness blend, and it will help you. But before any of that, make a conscious effort to stop doing this if you can. There are times, just because of survival needs, you have to do more than one thing, and thank God your brain knows how to separate those two. But I saw this on another Periscope, and when you put your Clarity on, focus on the one thing that you're working on. Say, I'm going to be intentional with what I'm using. It's going to bring a lot of things to that limbic part of the brain. It's bringing oxygenating molecules, but it's a blend of a ton of oils. There's 12 in there. There's lemon, rosemary. Rosemary by itself is another one that helps with concentration. It's helped with concentration for many, many years. Put it on. You put essential oils on. You can put them for concentration. For clarity, I put it actually up here by my temples of my my forehead, or my head right here, and the back of my neck. You can diffuse clarity, but physically putting something on, your limbic system is actually on the side of your head. It's sits right back behind here, and that olfactory part of your nose actually sends signals directly to that part of your brain. And if you've never heard, essential oils cross the blood-brain barrier, so they take things up into that area like nothing else can. So rosemary, peppermint by itself is also one that is great for promoting mental acuity. And I've even seen that. That's why I'm so awake tonight. I've been really tired in the evenings, but I had peppermint earlier because I was talking with someone. And so peppermint actually increases mental accuracy. And there's a study on that you can go find by Dr. Denber of the University of Cincinnati. And they studied peppermint oil for its ability to increase that. So that's also in clarity. Basil is great. People overlook basil a lot because we just think of it for cooking, but basil has some amazing properties for mental alertness, for the ability to remember things and to stay on task. Roman chamomile is in this one, which is more of the emotional side of this. So if you're out of whack emotionally because you are taxing that part of your brain, then you're going to want to use these things to bring down your stress level, to help with cortisol. Just use basil. Good. You'll be more in tune with what I'm saying. Geranium is in this blend. Geranium is another emotional oil that helps with relaxation, helps to balance the nervous system. So all of this stuff is connected. You know, we start to stress ourselves out by reading thousands of posts all day, and our brain is kind of like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to handle all of this information, and then trying to, what was I even doing? Have you ever done that? I have a Facebook team. How do you not become addicted to Facebook when you're running a YL business? That is a good question, because there's a lot of information out there, right? And that's where we put good information, but we don't overwhelm people. Delete the app on your phone. That's probably really good advice right there. someone says, I need all the assistance I can get. Well, I'm here to help you. My friend Christy Dempsey, she actually did this on another Periscope, and it has to do with the law of focus, which is a John Maxwell law of leadership. But she had this written up, and this is actually on the back of one of my whatever this is, laminate. But the focus 5. So you're actually going to pick 5 things to focus on, right? And write them down. Those are the 5 things. Like when you're sitting down to work on business, or you're sitting down to plan homeschool, or you're sitting down with your kids, even if it gets down to that. 5 things. Your to-do list might be thousands of pages long. 5 things, and work on the first one first, the second one second, the third one next, 4th, 5th, and erase them as you go. You will feel like you've accomplished something. That's why I love checklists. I like to see them marked out. But there will be times that I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 2 hours to work and I have 1,000 things to do. That's when I put on clarity. And if you have children and they struggle with this, the oil blend Genius. Have y'all ever heard of Genius? It's a great one for kids. Sort of like what Fly Lady tells us to do. Yes, but there's something to that. And even with learning, like when you go to learn something, focus on it. Don't just be flighty trying to compact all the stuff in. Focus on it. Read it over again. Say it. My kids do this is totally sidelined, but my kids do a program called Classical Conversations, and it is a classical model of learning. And I have learned so much doing that because we are focused on what we're learning and we sing a song with it. It's another way to add something to it. Genius is actually one of the monthly promos this month with Young Living. And it is in the Kids Sense collection, but you can also buy it separately. And it has sacred frankincense, blue cypress, cedarwood, Melissa, Idaho blue spruce, Palo Santo, galbanum, bergamot, myrrh, Hawaiian sandalwood, rosewood, geranium, ylang ylang, hyssop, spruce, and rose. That oil is amazing, especially for children. It's already pre-diluted in coconut oil, and so those are 2. But be very specific, with this, because it is something. When you feel like you want to overeat or you want to act like you just want to bawl and cry, sometimes it's because you've overwhelmed your brain trying to do too many things. I'm a user too. I need to hear this message too. So that is pretty much all I've got for you ladies tonight, and gentlemen, if you're on here. Best application on kids for Genius. I would specifically say to use this diffused for kids because it's affecting that part of the brain. But you can also place it over, like, you don't have to dilute it because it's already pre-diluted. You can apply to like their Vitaflex points on their feet for the brain area, which would be the big toe. You're welcome. Y'all have a good night. And I would put this on during schoolwork, reading, projects, anything that they need to focus on and not be distracted. And so, especially if you have kids that have a hard time with that, if there's too much going on in the room and they're trying to focus on all of it. You're right, Christy. We've all drank the Kool-Aid, right? It's awesome. We've all drank the Ningxia Red. That's what we've drank. So Genius, I would put there, but you could also put it over, I would say the same place, back of their neck too. So you guys take care, and will you have the replay on Periscope and YouTube? Yes. Time frames on that? I don't know. So usually it's within a couple of days. That's been a little bit slow lately. So Genius, my son gets distracted with his sisters. Genius would help, and also helping to teach him to focus on what he's doing specifically. My oldest son, when we homeschool, sometimes likes classical music in his headphones. And there is something to that helps. He's doing 2 things. It helps him focus by blocking out, trying to figure out what everybody's doing around him. My handle name is @theoilreleaser. If you need, I'm not on Catch, but I am on YouTube. Okay? You guys have any more questions? Now I will let y'all go. Sorry to wake you up so late. I feel bad I haven't done these in a while, but I wanted to get on, so Okay, you guys keep working. We're going to keep learning. We're going to keep learning about how to manage our emotions and help the ones around us do the same thing. You guys have a good night, and we will talk soon. Bye. I'm glad y'all are on. I didn't know if anybody would be awake this late. Alrighty, now here you get to watch me flip the camera down. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you soon.